Good, 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 good. And we're going to get started in 2 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, good. So some feedback from our backstagers that the sound is amazing.
Nice.
I'm wondering if Murphy is Amy's cat or dog or
It's a dog.
maybe
Yeah.
pet parakeet. All right. Live stream link. Going to get going in just 1 minute here. Folks, if you're tuned in to the live stream, we're going to get started literally in just a minute. Like to wait for the official time of 1 o'clock Eastern. I'm just going to go ahead and share the live streaming URL out on the social web. Here is the live. Boom. Okay. And we got recording on. Yes. All right, here we go.
All right.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to today's live web chat with Experian Automotive. Today is Tuesday, October 9th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Ryan Girardi, and in a few moments, I'm going to be bringing on Julie Lawton and Matt Kaloji from Experian Automotive, and they're going to share with us some data they have and some best practices around purchasing your own dealership name in paid search. So when it comes to paid search, we're often posed with the question, what's in a name? What are the best practices for a dealership when it comes to purchasing your own dealership name as a keyword? And according to the Experian sales-based attribution study, which we've brought up here numerous times on our live streams and on our podcast, shoppers who have clicked on your dealership name are 151% more likely to purchase from you. So what portion of your paid traffic should you be dedicating to your branded search campaigns? And should you also be purchasing your competitor's name? So I'm going to bring them on in a few moments. If you're watching this live, thank you again for being here. If you're watching the video replay, let me give a quick orientation on how all this fits in with the Advanced Auto Retail Marketing Series. What I'm going to do is share my screen and walk everybody through just a few items here. All right, so this is being recorded, and we will reproduce this and release it onto the AutoConverse podcast. And you can find that by searching AutoConverse in your preferred podcasting app. You can visit the podcast website. It's just podcast.autoconverse.com. There's also a menu option of it under here. Today's event is part of the Advanced Auto Retail Marketing Mastermind Series. So last week, we had Brian Miller on, and we looked at some image branding tips around vehicles on third-party classifieds, and you can catch the video replay on our YouTube channel. And as you see today, we have Matt and Julie coming on. So we stream all of these events, and so they're always up there. But we know that it's difficult to catch these live streams in the middle of your day. So you don't have to, it's not like you're missing out or anything. We encourage you, if you want more content from this series, is you sign up. And what that'll do is automatically invite you to any scheduled events that we have within this mastermind series. Now, at the end of the program, I'll walk you through some of the others that we have as well. If you look on this page, a couple of things to look for. One is we have a recurring Facebook event for each series and a link to our YouTube channel. And so it's really great seeing everybody subscribing to the channel, because if you turn on notifications, what'll happen is you'll be notified every time that we go live. And so you'll have it right there on your phone so that you can watch it at your convenience. There's also a watch page here. So anything that we release, you can watch it right there from our YouTube channel. So here's what I like to do. I'm going to turn off my screen share, and Matt and Julie, why don't we go ahead and bring you guys on, and we'll get this conversation started. And then afterwards, we'll do some closing orientations. And for folks that are here on the Zoom backstage, there is a Q&A option, and you're welcome to chime in with questions throughout and input as well, and I'll bring that into the conversation. So Matt, welcome to today's program. Hi there.
Hey, thanks, Ryan.
And Julie, good to see you again. How are you today?
Good. Nice to see you, Ryan.
Good. And so everything's checking out. Now, Julie's in Phoenix, I think you said, correct? Matt, where are you dialing in from?
I am in Groton, Massachusetts, so just north of Boston.
Okay. So you're getting the fall weather like we are here. I'm out in Chicago.
Yeah, big time. No, it's beautiful. Look outside, and it's the leaves are changing. It's like that classic New England vibe out there. So it's nice. Yeah.
I have two sons, and the oldest is 13, and we were in the car yesterday, and he says, I think I just realized why they call it fall. And I thought that was funny because, it's maybe not so obvious for a while.
Right.
I always remember my stepdad saying they call them leaves because you're supposed to leave them there, because everybody wakes up their leaves. He said you're supposed to leave them there. So, folks, I have a slide deck on my side. I'll bring on slides here and there as Matt's talking. And Matt and Julie, like I said, if you want me to bring up a specific slide, just let me know. But why don't we turn it over to you, Matt, and let you kind of kickstart, the idea behind what's in a name.
Sure. Yeah. So, everybody asks us this question, which is, is it worth it to buy my own dealership name, right? Am I just going to get that traffic organically? Is it worth it? I know the cost per click is low, but, what am I actually getting for it? And so, we're not a PPC vendor, which is kind of what sets us apart when we do this kind of analysis, because we're not trying to sell any sort of PPC services. We really just are looking at the data and trying to figure out what's working for dealers. And so, it's a good question. And we had, everyone was looking at things like, conversion rate data, inventory engagement, things like that once a user clicks through a branded search ad and gets to the site, dealership site. But we didn't really have any sort of unbiased kind of sales-based attribution to really prove that a branded search campaign might actually be worth your while. And so that's really where part of the impetus behind starting up the sales-based attribution was, let's dig into these commonly asked questions, and one of which is always, hey, should I actually be buying my own name?
Can you, real quick, because I mentioned the sales-based attribution study.
Yeah.
Can you just bring the audience up to speed on what that is? When the study was performed? Give us some context, real quick, on that.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great idea. So it was done just prior to NADA of this year, so like late last year. And it covered, it was a pretty wide ranging study in that it was about 5 months long and across, several different dealers in different markets, different OEMs, different website vendors, different PPC vendors. So it was a pretty good cross section of the industry is what we were trying to do. And it was all sort of based around, just a join between all that Google Analytics, behavioral data that every dealer is collecting, and some, accurate household identifiers to actually sort of bridge that online to offline gap. That's so key for this kind of study. And, thankfully Experian is able to do that because it can bring in sort of our Google Analytics expertise from the DPS team. We can bring in our sort of household specific tracking expertise through, Experian marketing services and targeting, and as well as the registration data that we get through Experian Auto. So it was really kind of all under one roof. We didn't have to go anywhere. It was all done in-house. And it was, really just meant to look at, out of all those sort of common advertising channels that a dealership uses, which one is actually helping to drive sales. And thanks to, user level segmentation and Google Analytics, you can actually, tie a household across, multiple devices and, multiple different channels, advertising channels, different visits, different sessions, different behavioral patterns, all thanks to just that one key that you push to GA when a user hits the site. So that becomes the kind of unique identifier that makes this all possible. And also gives us a chance to see, if they came in through a branded search, did they also come in through other channels, things like that? And this study allowed us to do that.
And I'll add to that. This is the study where Experian introduced the high value user, the HVU metric, which we did a live panel discussion on at NADA. Right. And for folks listening to this, if you want to get a recap of that, it's in one of our podcasts from probably back in, probably back in April or May. So why don't we move into, where this theme is going? Do you or Julie want to kind of start on about optimizing paid search specifically to drive sales?
Sure, Julie, you want to?
Sure. So I think optimizing paid search, like you said, to drive sales is one. Like Maddie said, the question is do they buy their own name or both? Do they buy their competitor's name? So optimizing, paid search is a huge conversation, but focusing on just those two types of things, where if a dealer should buy his own name and if he should buy a competitor's name. So I think when we look at those two, there's numerous things that we can analyze, and our attribution study looked at. First of all, I guess before we even did the attribution study, our thought was, no, you shouldn't really be buying a competitor's name. Okay. I can't think of a single dealer that has their entire house in order. It's just very difficult because it is such a massive and moving business. I mean, are their CSI scores good? Are the reviews great? Do they have market effectiveness? All of this goes into the question of, do they buy a competitor's name and do they buy theirs? Well, we can say that from people who come on the DPS, Maddie, it's an average 41% market share a dealer has in his primary market area.
Yeah, true. Yep.
That he's responsible for to his OEM. So the last thing I personally think that they should do is buy somebody else's name. But the empirical data from the study definitely talks about how buying their own name is much more beneficial, and how branded traffic really is the key to kind of closing into those low funnel shoppers.
Mm-hmm. Julie, aside from the data that you guys have, what about from a experiential standpoint? I mean, you're out there in the field interacting with dealers. When you're speaking with dealers about these types of questions, what's their, I guess, perception and understanding about this?
I would say that just like the shopping funnel, it goes from a really good understanding to I hire people to make the right decisions for me understanding. I think that with a dealer, most of them don't really have any idea of what percentage of their budget they should be spending on buying their own name. What percentage, I don't even think they know what percentage, if they're buying somebody else's name it is, or whether it's model specific keywords. I don't think they really have a good grasp on what the percentages really should be. And I think the understanding, I've met some dealers that, spend their life in Google Analytics, right? Well, I can tell you those dealers, there's something on the fixed op sides that are falling short, as well as some other sales derivatives within the dealership. But you look at the other ones that have really, really good sales numbers, have more effectiveness, at least 65% market share, and they're not spending their time in Google Analytics. They're people managers. So, I think that the understanding goes to SCAT, but I would say about 80% of dealers don't really know where they should be spending their money when it comes to paid search.
Do you think what level, Matt, of understanding, or maybe Julie, do you think they need? Because it can be overwhelming managing managing ad campaigns, the data, like you said, they don't want to spend a ton of their time in analytics. Well, the less time they spend, analyzing and getting their head wrapped around the data, the more they're dependent on partners and vendors to be open and transparent. So, I mean, I guess it's where Experian comes in. You can run reports and an analysis and say, look, here's what's actually happening. No matter what anyone tells you,
Right.
This is what's happening, right?
Right.
Okay. Matt, let me share my screen. I'm on this this kind of flow here of what drives sales. You have a study flow here. Maybe you could spend a moment speaking to that. Let me bring that up here.
Sure, yeah. This gets into a little bit of what I was getting at earlier. And basically, we wanted to look at, again, just all the typical advertising channels that a dealership uses, in order to fill the top of the funnel with shoppers, right? So everything from, paid search, which is what we're focused on today, which honestly you could spend, and I think we're going to get into this in subsequent webinars, but there's so much to dig into just on the paid search side, which is what we found out. And it's, for dealers, this is a little aside. Search is still king, 100%. That's where you need, if any extra, money in your budget for advertising budget, always put it toward paid search unless you have absolutely maximized that channel to its, fullest extent. And again, as Ryan was hinting at earlier, it's hard to know how well you're doing if you're just purely relying on vendors, which is where, again, someone like, Experian and our, to do the shameless plug here, the dealer positioning system really comes in handy because, we have some, not only a performance manager, but also the platform to kind of walk you through what opportunities you're missing on those types of especially paid search, but even other types of advertising. But that's where we wanted to look. We just wanted to see what kind of advertising was actually, most effective at driving sales. And in order to do that, we had to create a sort of custom pixel that tied into Google Analytics, which pushed that unique identifier that I was mentioning earlier, that sort of allowed, so every session, that occurs on a dealership's website, has that pixel attached to it. So we know which device is being used. And then from there, we, work with, the in-house team at Experian to tie those different pixel IDs back to individual households. And, households can obviously have multiple devices visiting a single site, within any given time period. So that's part of the process is identifying which of these unique pixels, which, you get one per device, as long as you don't clear your cookies, which of those belong to which households. And we filtered out all the data that wasn't 100% accurate, that we know this device exists at this household. And then we just looked at basically, since we know who's visiting, it's an easy step from there to say, okay, well, who actually bought a car, and who bought a car not only from our participating dealers in the study, but also who bought a car from the market as a whole, right? Because we have all that registration data coming in. So that was basically like the flow of the study. So first, we just gathered a ton of data from the dealership's websites, tied that through GA to our own sort of Experian marketing services technology, and then use the registration data to look at who purchased, who didn't, and where did they buy the car.
Just going back to what you kind of started off with, were you suggesting that paid search is where you want to maximize your budget? Like that's if you were to put it in a hierarchy, that's going to produce the most return?
That, according to our study, absolutely. And just in my own personal opinion, it's just the easiest and most effective channel to focus on if you're a dealership. And I mean, if you just think about it logically, it makes sense because, if you are searching for a particular vehicle or you're searching for a particular dealer, your chances, there's a good chance you're in market for a vehicle, right? So if you are looking to make an impact immediately on your bottom line, paid search is a fantastic way to do that. Organic search is also really effective, but that's a much longer play that you're making there because, anyone who's familiar with SEO knows, it's a bit of there are so many more factors at play there, and you can't just sort of turn on the faucet like the way you can with paid search in order to drive more of that relevant low funnel traffic to your site. So, yeah, there's some great slides, Ryan. And if you go one previous to slide 10, this just gives you a rough idea. So just to kind of back up the point I was saying earlier. So this is the purchase rate for all of our, aggregated purchase rate for all of our participating dealers and all the households that we were able to track. And just to give you an idea, I mean, it was over 41,000 households that we looked at here. And so, of those households, what their behavior looks like as far as buying a car from the participating dealer, which would be the purple bars. And for those who maybe can't see the contrast super well, those would be the bars on the right for each set of columns, and then the blue bars on the left would be all sales. So in other words, did these households buy from one of the dealers that we were actually studying, or did they buy from some other source, be it another dealership, a private party sale, whatever it might be? Those would all fall into the blue bars on the left for each set of columns.
Matt, you mentioned 41,000 households in the study. How many dealers were in the study?
It was, I think it was 15 dealers, but I should probably double check that next time.
No, actually it was 31.
Oh, it's 31. Oh God, excuse me. I was way off. So thank you, Julia, for stepping in there. And it was, 41,000 households. We had over 187,000 unique IDs. So, it's a good volume of traffic that we were looking at across all these different dealerships. And just to back up kind of what I was saying earlier about the search being, just essentially just being the best bang for your buck. These are the different channels broken out, each of these sets of columns. You can see branded search on the far left, which is what we're going to be focusing on today. And, for those listening just by audio only, it's, essentially double the purchase rate for all sales so if you were to look at people who came in through branded search, but bought from somewhere else, those who bought from the actual participating dealers, it's about double the rate. And if you go down the line here, pretty much anything you see tagged with, you can see paid search as a whole, which is the third set of columns from the left. Other than branded search, it's, by far the highest purchase rate for the participating dealers came through, paid search as opposed to even direct traffic, email traffic, pre-roll, display, even organic search. It's edging organic search as being the highest purchase rate of any of the channels that we looked at. Sure. So, yeah.
So the video stream is blocking off my view of what's next to email, so I can't see it. What's the last bar on the right that I can't see?
It's display and then pre-roll. So
pre-roll. Okay.
Yeah. And then third parties are in there as well. I think that's the one just before email where it's actually, the sales we're able to tie back directly to our participating dealers was much, was a little bit lower than those who bought from the whole, from somewhere else in the market as a whole. So again, there's a ton of different data we were able to pull from this study. But really it's, one of the big takeaways and hence all of these sort of, PPC hacks that we're trying to present to you is, paid search absolutely matters. And for dealerships who get it right, there will be an immediate payoff.
Question came in while you were talking. So what that chart clearly showed was that if someone's searching for your brand by, and when you say branded search, you mean dealership name.
Correct. Yes, that's a good point. So that's right. The specific name of the dealership. Yeah. All
right. So that metric is yielding the most sales. That's what your attribution study shows, is that metric, that type of action is yielding the most sales. So what portion, let me look at the question again. Yeah. What portion of your budget should go towards branded search versus non-branded search, I guess?
That's great. Yeah, that's a good question, because that's another one we would get constantly. And It's going to vary dealership to dealership, but we would say anywhere in the 5 to 15% range of your paid search budget should be going to branded search.
Okay.
And what I mean by this, why there's such a big variation there is, there's a metric that's easily pulled from either Google or Bing for when you're running these ad campaigns, which is search impression share. Anyone who's sort of played around in PPC for a little while has probably heard that. It's becoming a more and more popular metric to look at. And what that essentially tells you is for all the searches that occur.
Matt just froze.
He did just freeze.
Yeah, we were concerned about that because I think he's dialed in through a VPN. Do you know what he was about to say?
I don't know where he was going, but I'll pick up where he was, the 5 to 10%. Well,
Okay.
really 5 to 15%. So the reason the metric varies so much is because you could be in Brooklyn, right? Or you could be in a suburb of Nashville, Tennessee. And so what you're going to spend is very different. It also, depending on how competitive. So let's say in Washington State, Chrysler dealers, they're going to be 8 miles apart. Well, in LA, they're not, right? So they're going to end up spending more money and people may be buying their name. So you see that percentage of 5 to 15% because you're going to win if you buy your own name and you buy it in your own PMA or primary market or AOI, whatever anybody wants to call it. If you buy it in your own market area, you're going to have, because of your location, according to Google, you're going to have the optimization to go for a higher impression share and show up first. There may be somebody else buying the name, which would obviously up the cost per click. Mm-hmm. So that's why we have the variation of 5 to 15%.
I don't think that's a big range personally. I was kind of curious from the question if it was going to be like 30% of your budget. So that makes sense. Are you able to speak, Julie, to how Experian does its attribution? Because there's been controversy over the past couple of years about first click, last click, all the good stuff. Can you just explain to the audience how Experian attributes budgets? Spend and sales.
Yeah. So if we look at just the attribution study alone, we're not going by first click, last click, progressive. We're not doing any of those. We're kind of looking at, okay, somebody came in through direct and branded and moving into that high value user metric. So if somebody came in through direct and branded, we're seeing that they may return through model specific PPC or organic the next time. And they may visit the site 6, 7 times and they may come through a different channel each time. But when they do start their search and come through direct and branded, we're seeing that they produce the most high value users, which are the people that are most apt to buy a car within the next 30 days, right? Mm-hmm. So the nice part about that is that you have to do all of these other segments, right? So you need to do, model specific, which is another discussion that we have on podcasts with you later on. You need to do, you're going to always have organic. You're going to do traditional media often, either it's radio or TV or whatnot, but that's going to push up your direct and branded as well as some of your PPC, and people will come in through those, and organic. So it's important to measure all sorts of ways people come in, but you've got to have a metric like high value users that really develops and pinpoints why this is a better metric, or if they come through this, direct and branded, why it's so important. So I think that when you look at something like that, it's just really, you can't just measure first, last, or any way the people come in or how often they come in. There's got to be another metric that grounds when you're doing any type of attribution study. And we just haven't seen that yet. But that is one thing that we do and that Experian does, is that it is really very straight up data. This is it. And we will always look at it through, like you have up on the screen now, the high value metric, in order to gauge whether the traffic is valuable or not.
Thank you. And Matt, glad you made it back. Julie was able to pick up, kind of segue out if you want to finish that thought. But what I realize is we mentioned the attribution study, we mentioned the HVU metric, but we really didn't explain what the HVU metric is. So I found this slide here that distinguishes, I think the return that HVU, high value user, has versus others. So could you explain for us what the HVU metric is and how it relates to this slide?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's basically, I heard some of what Julie was saying, and that's, she's spot on in that it essentially measures all the, it rolls up several different behavioral metrics and signals that we know make someone more likely to be an actual car buyer. It's just a better, it's essentially a better predictive metric that someone is going to purchase a vehicle from the specific dealership. And our attribution study kind of proved that. And
but explain how you determine that. I'm sorry, but
no worries.
How you determine, how you identify what, there's some metrics. I know what they are, but I want you to explain it. There's, I think, 6 key metrics that make a visitor an HVU.
High value user. Yep, exactly. So we found that if you visit a dealership site multiple times, if you view 8 pages or more, if you spend 6 minutes or more across all those different visits that that the shopper engages with the dealership site, and if they engage with inventory in some way, so they actually touch an individual vehicle details page, if they sort of tick all those boxes and meet all those different criteria, that's what makes them a high value user. And all of those different metrics in isolation. So in other words, just pages per visit or just session duration. Those are all pretty, better indicators that someone is actually going to be an actual purchaser as opposed to just a website visitor. But when you roll them all up together, that's what really sends all those different signals that there's some intention to buy here. And that slide you had up earlier basically just shows the purchase rate when we actually looked at high value users versus just website visitors as a whole. When you're coming through any different channel, any different advertising channel, high value users had a higher purchase rate than the average visitor from that channel. So the data bore it out. It was, and in particular for paid search, it's just through the roof, where it's like, if you're capturing high value users through paid search, and in particular certain campaigns, including branded, if you can measure that and see those creep up month after month, you are going to get more sales.
Yeah. And what I'd like to do is emphasize it's real easy for someone to listen to this and say, well, duh, the more engagement, the more likely they're going to buy a car. Right.
Right.
But what you're saying is it's go beyond the theory, identify who they are, get in your analytics, set up goals so that when a visitor hits those things, now you've got them tagged, because that once they meet all that criteria, you're going to get 3 times the likeliness of selling them a car. So
exactly,
what can a dealer do on their side to identify that and really take action on it is the challenge.
Yeah, exactly. And we at Experian, we obviously, this is one of our proprietary metrics that we like to focus on. So part of our expertise is helping to identify where those high values come from and how to get more. But as you said, Ryan, it's not exactly it makes sense logically. We just wanted to bear it out in the study, which is what we did. We wanted to prove it, that it was actually tied to sales. We knew it correlated well with sales, but we knew we knew that once we have some actual data tied to individual households who purchased a vehicle, then all of a sudden we're really working with something good here. Because previously we had tested just correlative relationships. So in other words, if a dealer gets more high value users, they would get more sales. And that had a really strong correlation between the two, a positive correlation. More high value users would equal more sales at the end of the month.
And I think that leads to a future session we plan to do, which is how to get more high value users.
Exactly.
Obviously, branded keywords is one way to do that, right?
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Maximize your branded search and it'll absolutely pay dividends down the road. And Experian is really the only one who could create a study to kind of link all this together, which is which is kind of our what made our study so unique. And we didn't really have any dog in the fight. We just wanted to see who was going, which advertising channel was going to perform best, and Brandon really hit the nail on it.
Let me recap these 3 key takeaways here, folks. You're tuned in to the Advanced Auto Retail Marketing series here with Julie Lawton and Matt Kaloji from Experian Automotive. And we're looking at some of the data behind purchasing your own dealership name for paid search. And what the data shows from their study is that buying your own name is proven to be one of the most effective ways, cost-effective ways to drive high quality traffic to your site. It doesn't have to be costly. You estimate anywhere from 5 to 15% of your paid search budget could go into that. So that's a relatively small portion. It's less than tipping somebody, at the restaurant.
Yeah.
And you also have determined that buying the competitor's name is not a recommended practice. There's little return, little value in doing that. Can we, just to kind of wind this down, because I know I've interjected a lot with some of what you want to get across. Do you want to provide maybe your own recap, Matt, real quick, and then maybe you, Julie, and kind of give us your take on all this for us?
Yeah, sure. So basically, the answer to the kind of age-old question here of whether you should buy your own name is, I would say absolutely yes. As Ryan was just saying, you don't need to put much of your budget toward it. Talk to your PPC vendor about what your impression share is, your search impression share for your branded keywords, because that's what's going to really determine how much of your budget you need to devote to branded. So in other words, if you're already showing, because we can, sometimes, if your search impression share is already at close to 90%, in other words, you are already showing for all of your branded searches that are occurring in your market for your dealership name, you might even be able to, dial back that spend a little bit. But basically, it's absolutely worth the money. The purchase rates for people coming through branded search to your site are very high, which would lead you to believe, hey, maybe I should buy a competitor's name, right? Because if we know people are buying for a specific, dealership's brand name, let's try to hijack those customers. And since we know they have a high purchase rate and maybe they'll buy from us, in our study, we couldn't find a single sale that we were able to 100% with confidence tie back to a competitor dealer campaign, which is not every participating dealer was buying other dealerships' branded names, but there were some participants who were doing that. And that was kind of a big key takeaway for us. So that's why we're saying it's not worth it. It's just my personal opinion is the shopper is too far down the funnel to hijack them in order to get them to sort of purchase from you. There are going to be a lot of returning visitors. So it doesn't work. And we've seen dealers spend, a good chunk of their budget on competitor names if they get, Julie talks about this all the time where, dealers are very competitive and they see someone bidding on their name and then they go after them in return. But your money is so much better spent on other campaigns. And we'll get into more of that later with some of the other PPC hacks that we're going to do. But yeah, that's my summary.
So what I heard you say is that dealers are doing it. Julie, in your experience, how the dealers that are buying competitors' names, how much are they spending percentage-wise in their budget? And how common is it? Do you know?
It's pretty common. I would say that in especially larger competitive metro market areas, it's much more common than it is in, let's just say, a very suburban area or a very rural area. I have seen the highest I ever saw was 35%, and I almost died. So, but I've seen it. The average I would say is about 20% because it does cost so much more to buy somebody else's name. So once we see that, we try to do our best with the dealer to understand, but there's this competitive nature, right? Well, I don't want them pumping into my PMA. I don't want them stealing sales from me and they're buying, their name in my area. Once again, if your house is in order, right? And you are doing what you're supposed to, and you have good reviews and you have a balanced budget and you're selling enough cars and you take care of the customers, especially in a PMA, that's gonna go far, right? I will say that they should be buying their own name, as Maddie said, and I think he covered that. But the reason they shouldn't be buying the competitor's name is because their money is so much better spent and we're going to talk about this later on like model specific in SEM and PPC, in order to really truly block out that dealer in their own like core area, right? So in their PMA, they really need to be focused on other keywords than somebody else's name. And especially since we found that it doesn't even relate back to sales. But I do understand the competitive nature. There's a better way to be competitive with paid search than buying a competitor's name.
Yeah. And you already alluded to this for folks that are listening. We're going to have Matt and Julie back hopefully sooner than later, probably within a few weeks. And we're going to get into more make model specific strategies with paid search. And then I think the third segment was going to be is going to get deeper into the high value user metric, correct?
Correct.
I think so. Yeah, that'll be fun. That'll be a fun one.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good. Matt, Julie, thank you so much for sharing this with us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, Ryan.
So, folks, what I'm going to do is let you guys can go ahead and stop your videos. Actually, you don't even need to do that. I'm going to go ahead and reshare my screen and just give a final orientation for folks. So give me 1 second here, and I'll just do a little final orientation on what to expect moving forward. So let's pop this up here. All right. So again, this is Matt and Julie from Experian Automotive looking at some paid search strategies today, specifically on purchasing your own dealership name. This is all part of the Advanced Auto Retail Marketing series, which is just a recurring series of virtual web events like this. They're all streamed live onto our YouTube channel. We record them, and then we release a series of videos and podcasts from this. You can sign up for this series. You only have to sign up once, and you'll automatically receive an invitation to join us here on the Zoom webinar portion. Of course, you can watch it without signing up by the live stream. There is a recurring event on Facebook for this and all of our events that we do. And what I recommend you do is, if you're into Facebook, is you subscribe to the events that interest you, and that's where we'll post announcements about each of these, and we'll also put in some of the show notes and talking points. There is also a link on that page to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and if you do that, press on the bell icon, and then you'll get notified every time that we're going to go live on any of our events. In fact, if you look at the programming section of our website, you will get a complete list of all of the different programming that we have going on, and all of it's related to mobility, connectivity, that of course includes automotive and automotive B2B as well. There is a calendar of events, and if you look at the calendar of events, then you can see what we have lined up on specific dates, and you can see who's going to be participating in those as well, and a link to their LinkedIn profiles. So I'm going to go ahead and wind this down, everybody, and thank you again for being here, and we will see you probably within the next couple of weeks. Take care, everyone. Do-do-do. You guys can shut off your video. I can't seem to.
Okay.
There you go.